The factory of sadness that is the Browns Stadium, and no, I don't know what they're calling it this week, will be filled with 73,000 actual Cleveland fans. They still pack the place. They still don't give up their tickets. And they still don't get to see an even remotely competitive product. Good morning to you. Good Thursday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into hockey and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates that I hope you'll also check out. Steelers versus Browns is an 8:15 p.m. kickoff tonight. I'll be there covering it, heading up later this afternoon. Really looking forward to it. I don't care about Thursday night boogeymen. I don't care about road divisional atmospheres or anything like that. I care that one of these teams is 8-2. The other one is the polar opposite. And on that note, here are a handful of things I'd really like to see tonight. Let's start with getting back after the quarterback, meaning all the way after the quarterback. It's been a couple of weeks that the Steelers decided, and I believe correctly so, that they couldn't do that. Because if they had over-pursued Jaden Daniels, he was going to burn them on the ground. If they had over-pursued Lamar Jackson, he would have been the same MVP-level weapon that he is against everyone else. But now you're talking about Jameis Winston, who's all pocket all the time and can't be allowed to become even the slightest bit comfortable. As such, and especially with the Browns missing their top two left tackles, they'll be going with a third stringer. That'll allow Nick Herbig to feast, and of course the guy at the other edge as well. I would also like to see that guy at the other edge do just one leg kick toward the Cleveland sideline. However many sacks he gets, however many big plays, just once. Be that petty. He won't do this, okay? I know he won't do this. He doesn't have this personality. But if he did, can you imagine the fuss that would happen all over the football world? Can you imagine the statement that TJ Watt would be making? That not only am I the better defensive player than Myles Garrett, but I'm the better defensive player every single time that these teams go head to head. That really ought to matter a lot more than Garrett's shuffleboard style near victories that score him points with the Chris Collinsworth owned think tank. I'd like to see 10 Justin Fields snaps. Yes, I said 10. It was only 3 in the last game. I'm not worried about showing my cards. I'm not worried about letting the Bengals see what the Steelers offense can do. If anybody wants to study how Fields can hurt you, there's 3 years in Chicago and 6 full games from this season alone. There's no need to be sneaky about anything. The secret's out. They saved it for Baltimore, the biggest game. They showed it to the Ravens. John Harbaugh had no plan whatsoever to counter it, and that's the only element of surprise that's needed at any stage of this offense's maturation. Get him involved, get him out there, get him part of the team again. Get him to get you the sequences that weren't necessarily going great for Russell Wilson's offense. Make it clear to all concerned, including notably both of the quarterbacks, that it's Russ's offense. This isn't any kind of expression of doubt on the coaching staff's part. It's not any sort of demotion for Russ. It's just, we've got all these weapons. We're nuts to not use them. We're nuts to not use that guy when you need 3rd and short, 4th and short, or you're down close to the goal line and you want to throw everybody off. Doesn't have to be when you're desperate. Doesn't have to be 3rd down. Doesn't have to be 4th. You can do it on 2nd down when you're near the goal line and just, take a shot. Take a shot with Justin. See what happens. 10 times. I'm saying it again. I want to see the ball make it to Justin 10 times. I'm willing, however, the next thing that I want to see, to go with half that number. How about 5 Mike Williams targets? Look, I get it. He basically came to the Steelers without having any semblance of a clue about the playbook. He still managed to win a game in Landover because they just told him something that they'd been telling him since he was playing in the backyard, which is just go long. He did that, and he did it really well. And there's a lot more to football than that. If he's going to be out there for, I don't know, let's say it ramps up from the 15 snaps that he got this past week, 0 targets, by the way, to like 20 to 25 snaps, 5 targets. 5 targets. Throw him the ball 5 times. Give him the most basic route. Let everybody else do their thing. Modify the scheme for him to keep it as simple and clean as possible. Make sure he's not running into somebody, but otherwise, get him the football. He's a big dude. He can do a lot of different things, and he can run after the catch. None of those things are in the domain of any wide receiver or any other wide receiver on the roster besides George Pickens. That has to change. That has to change. And the 5th thing I want to see, this is so petty that I almost considered leaving it off my little list that I scratched up here. I really like seeing the Cleveland fans sad. And I don't even mean that in some malicious way. Trust me on that. I'm on the record as repeating year after year that this is the most committed fan base in all of professional sports. And I don't know that there's even a close second. Now, don't go getting mad at me here. But you know, and I know, if the Steelers were 2-8 right now, we'd be seeing a whole lot of yellow at Acrisure Stadium. We'd be seeing a whole lot of black and gold on the flights that fan out all over the continent every weekend. And we'd be seeing some epic vitriol. Now, the Clevelanders have that third part down. They're mad. They don't ever let up with being mad. But they also don't stop going. You will see tonight, even though the game is a 2.5-hour drive from here, even though one team's going way up and the other team's sinking way down, you will see brown, the color, jerseys. You will see dog masks. You will see these weirdos, and I mean that in an actually affectionate way, because they show up so early for their tailgating, even though it's not convenient. They don't have that many parking lots right around the stadium. It's stretched all the way down an adjacent freeway, and they'll be showing up as if it's a playoff game. I think that's amazing. I also think it's awesome when they are sad and when they lose, because to me, that's like calibrating the world. That's like saying the earth is healing. That's like saying everything is okay. When the Cubs finally won a World Series a few years ago, I was devastated. I thought that was just horrible. I thought it was end of times. I thought our planet was about to tilt on its axis. Someday, when Cleveland's baseball team does that, and that might never happen, it would be a first since 1957. And here again, our very civilization would be put at risk. That's troubling. Let's see them unhappy. When we come back, J1Q. This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar. Today's J1Q comes from Chris out in Utah. He asks DK, the Steelers have always focused on special teams, but this year they're really special. Does the improvement and the domination of this facet of the team this year reflect an increase in overall depth, the targeting of great special teams players, a better punter, or a combination, or is it something else entirely? Chris, I'm going to start with not the obvious, and that's that your special teams are largely as good as your kicker. Okay, when Chris Boswell's getting AFC Special Teams Player of the Week pretty much every week, you know you've got the right guy putting the points through the uprights. He's been tremendous, but then he's been that for a very long time. I'm going to point instead, at least initially, to Corliss Waitman, because I was in the locker room when Cameron Johnston got hurt, and I got to tell you that Danny Smith took it hard. He was upset, obviously, for the player. Johnston's a pretty tough and also pretty fun dude to be around. But I'm sure in that moment that it felt to Smith that, you know, he was really going to be in a bind, because it's not just you lose the punter and you got to replace the punter. You've built your coverages, your designs, and to an extent, even your special teams coverage roster around Johnston's skill set, which is to kick the ball pretty much into orbit. That's the kind of distance that Johnston gets. And then when the Steelers brought Waitman in afterward, it was kind of just one of those, oh yeah, they're just bringing in some dude whose phone number they happen to keep convenient, and it wasn't anything that inspired any faith. And yet Waitman goes out there the following weekend in Denver and just kicked beautifully, built up some confidence, built up some credibility, including the locker room. And I can tell you from talking to him that day that he felt really good about it. He felt like a sigh of relief, like I'm not just here to fill in or as part of some glorified in-season tryout. I'm the guy. I'm going to be the guy. That's been a big, big deal for this team. That I feel out of all the other special teams wonders, notably the blocks, has been kind of forgotten in this. We should have been, all of us, talking about the punting for the better part of these 10 weeks, and instead, it's never come up. Now, to your last point there, Chris, and this mostly relates to your guys that are on coverage and returns and so forth, as to whether or not the Steelers went out and got themselves, you know, special teams aces and so forth. I mean, they brought Tyler Matakevich back. They brought Ben Skoranek in. They obviously had Miles Killebrew back after his Pro Bowl performance in 2023. But they also let go of Miles Boykin, and that one surprised me because Boykin was in a gunner role. Boykin was in a role that the opponents had difficulty stopping. But where I give Smith and by extension Mike Tomlin credit here is that they looked at what Boykin did and they put that into the prism of the way kickoffs were as opposed to what they were going to be. And there were some crazy things that they showed in training camp. Most of them didn't come to fruition, but you were seeing 300-pound defensive linemen out there on kick coverage, stuff that would never have remotely crossed your mind before the rule changes. And by the way, if you're wondering why I'm not mentioning Cordero Patterson, when Patterson is seen as one of the NFL's better special teams guys, one of the better returners in recent years across the league, it's because we've still yet to see that. Patterson is a multi-talented, flexible weapon that while Smith welcomed having Patterson, that was mostly an Arthur Smith thing because that coach Smith had Patterson in Atlanta and thought he'd be of use to the regular offense. So I'm not giving you much of an answer here, Chris, in the sense that there's not a definitive thing here, and there can't be because special teams comes with so many different components. But when you have all of those components firing off at a similar level, well, you got to understand there's a reason these players love Danny Smith the way that they do and respect him the way that they do, because you've got to have everything being poured into that job. I appreciate the question. I'm going to be leaving early this afternoon for Cleveland, but not before I put together a double shot show for you. That's going to go up much sooner than the norm today because of the kickoff. It'll be up at 1 p.m. Eastern on all platforms. And tomorrow, we're going to have another one of these. Oh, and hey, one more thing before I let you go. If you're driving to Cleveland For God's sake, don't speed. Now, I don't say that all the time, but if you're speeding in Ohio and they see your Pennsylvania plates, they will get you. They don't even bother hiding this anymore. Ohio State cops just everywhere looking for Pennsylvania plates. They'll get you on an off-ramp. They got me on an off-ramp last year. Who speeds on an off-ramp? Let's do this again tomorrow.